After rebuilding the transfer case, the next thing to do was replace the seal here. So I just used a pry bar to work that out until it finally came out. And you want to clean everything up real good with some brake cleaner or something like that, and clean everything off. You notice here there's a little valley or a trough or a drain, and that's it, kind of like off your water pump. It's an indicator if there's a leak in here, either off of this seal or off of the one from your transfer case. We're gonna put a new seal in here. Got it all cleaned up. I put a little bit of RTV sealant around the circumference of the seal, and then I'm just letting that set, and then I'll tap the new seal in around the shaft there. And then there was a gasket too that you could put on here as well, but technically it really doesn't serve much purpose because your two seals are doing the sealing action. Whether or not this is sealed to the transfer case, I don't think makes a difference at all. So you could use one or not. Here we are here after we put the seal in there. The way that I put it in was I just used a small piece of round stock that just fits in between here, and I just set it on the edge, and I tap that with a hammer either side, and then kind of like all the way around. So that fits in there, that taps that in nice and flush with the edge here. And we got that silicone around the outside of the seal, so this is just a little extra so it's not going to leak anywhere on the outside of the seal. And now we're ready to install the transfer case. So it's time to put this transfer case in, and what I got is kind of like a saddle, little bracket there to go on the end of the transmission jack, and then I got strapped down to hold it in place while I kind of get it where I need it to be. I got some wiggle room in here to kind of wiggle it around and line it up and fit it in, but there's no oil in it right now or anything like that because we don't want to make a big mess trying to install it. So we'll put the oil in after it's installed. It kind of lined up here. We got it started on the splines. The bolts are pretty close to being lined up there. Just a little bit of tweaking and then we can push it in. But before we get too carried away, if we can maybe see right there, we got a plug, and right there is our vent. Now would probably be a good time to hook both of those up before we slide that in, connect it, and bolt it on. And here it is attached with the strap. We have a strap right there. We have this attached to our little plate that goes to our floor jack here, supporting everything in place. And then that way I got some free hands and I'm not trying to lift anything by myself. It's pretty heavy. We got that vent line hooked up, and we got this plugged in. Highly recommend doing that now before we squeeze this together. When we're pushing this in, lining it up with the bolts here, it's not straight. It's kind of angled down on the back end. You got to be aware of that. And then also too, if you're worried about the seal, there's the splines coming out of the shaft, out of the transmission. The splines on those shafts should line everything up, so when you slide it in, then it's not going to compromise that seal, hopefully. And just as a extra insurance, I just put a bunch of grease around the outside of the shaft there, so hopefully that'll help when it engages and doesn't damage that seal. One last thing is if you're having troubles lining that up, you can turn your yoke here, and then so I got this engaged into high, so you can turn this, and then you'll be able to turn your shaft, your input there, so that those splines will line up. So tighten up the bolts here. These two are pretty good to get at. That bottom one right there, that one's gonna be difficult. And then on this side here, that one not so bad, and the one above that not so bad, but the top one is gonna be real bad. It's gonna be hard to get anything in there. I pretty much just use that short stubby ratchet wrench to get at everything and tighten it down by hand, because you can't fit anything in there to really torque it to any kind of specifications. We got that rear drive shaft bolted up, and it will be about 8mm open end wrench on the end. The closed end wasn't fitting on mine. I guess that prevents you from over tightening it, but also too, you got to worry about stripping the head. So that takes care of that. This is our modified linkage that we put in here. We got it all connected together, and this is your adjustment. So this one here is not adjustable. So once you've got that, then you find out where this is going to ride in for this, and then you tighten this down. So that should give us our 3. All the way out is going to be high, and then in the center is going to be neutral, and then all the way back to the transfer case is going to be low. And then you take a look upstairs and make sure that everything corresponds up there and everything feels like it's shifting and going into gear properly. And here, this is one of the bolts for our bracket. And if you remember, we just welded a nut on the other side here, so all we got to do is just line this up and screw it in. And I just use socket and extensions, and I get it that one. And this one's a little harder to see, but it's the same thing. Got a nut welded on the top there. Start this, sockets, extension, tighten that up. It's all good. This seems to be where our shifting cable and our wiring wanted to be. They're not in the way of the linkage here, so that's all good. Here's our selector in the cab here. So we've got it on 4 high, neutral, 4 low. So we operate this inside. We make sure it's all engaged and operating good. Just finished installing the front drive shaft here. That's going to be an 8mm combination wrench with 6 bolts on the front, going to the front differential, and 4 bolts on the back here. Hard to see, but they're back here. That's where they go. 1, 2, and then another 2 on the other side. Again, those are going to be 8mm combo wrench, and just hand tight is what I went. I'm trying not to break the bolts or strip the heads or anything like that. When you're putting this in, you kind of want to put this in first, and then you can rest this end on here. And once you've got the front end bolted up, then you can line this up and bolt this up. And that should be it for the transfer case installation.